but they changed.
Sounds good. So if you wanted to make sure you're paying for like one screen right here, you can just kind of do a quick introduction of everyone. Right? It'll be on YouTube, yeah. You're okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. If you don't like what's happening, we can change it.
I'm just doing a quick intro.
If you leave me guessing, darling, then I guess you're not for me.
And I guess, sorry.
When you're talking with an old friend. And you just
Yeah, we can do. I'll just get it here. I'll just mute the music temporarily. All right.
Until our single speaker comes back from the washroom and.
Okay. Everybody on Zoom, we're going to get started in a couple minutes. Test.
everyone's in.
So what's it?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that you like start the music in the room.
Yeah, we got it.
Perfect, thank you.
It's done.
Oh yeah, anybody that's got that going, I just. Okay, thanks everyone. Hello and welcome everyone to Concordia University's fourth space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, Math Beyond the Numbers, an EDI panel discussion moderated by Misty Waterfalls. And to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from fourth space, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Chichage, Montreal. And at fourth space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge. We create daily events that examine research questions, projects, things in development here at the university. And just so you know, we're running this as a hybrid event, as a Zoom meeting. So we welcome comments, questions in the chat. And for those of you, of course, in the space during the Q&A, if you'd like to participate, just let us know by raising a hand. We'll get a microphone to you. And we do turn our cameras during the live stream for questions, but if you would prefer that not to happen, just wave at us. We'll look the other way. And with that, it is very much my pleasure to hand it over to the chair of the Math and Statistics Department, Dr. Marco Bertola.
I didn't do anything yet. Right? Okay, so thank you. Welcome, welcome to this event that we are happy to have sponsored with the Department of Mathematics and the help of the Dean's Office. And this is one of the many events. This is one of the many events that our project coordinator Christopher Plenzich is organizing. Different type of outreach activities, EDI events, and other type of vulgarization activities. So I think that's all I have to say, and I think I can just let the panelists join the table, or we have first we have a. Oh, we'll start the event according to the program. Thank you.
I really wanna stop. Just wait for it. I feel like it's like the bottom moon. Honey, my hand, you let me come wait for it. I feel like you're back walking up to the room. Oh yes, late watching television, but how we get this is way too short. I need to tell you something. I want you to.
Now.
It's like everything you say is sweet validation. All I want to do is get in this head that we could stay alone. You temptation, honest, baby, please watching. So I need to tell you something.
Math.
Math.
Math. Who gave you eyes on phone? Said you could keep them. I don't know how to act, but if I should be leaving, I'm running out of time. Going on my mind. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you something.
Math. Math.
Math.
I know what you're all asking yourselves right now. The answer is no, I'm not a natural blonde. You know, you're probably asking yourselves, what is this extremely tall woman doing screaming in a microphone right now? Hi, my name is Misty Waterfalls. Nice to meet you all. I will be the moderator and host for today's events. So I would first like to start off by grabbing my note cards because with the wig this tight, I can't remember anything, okay? That's just part of the game. So first, I would like to welcome you all to the Math Beyond the Numbers and Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Panel Discussion. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to those online. Hi. Hello. Jack should never be seen up that close. That was a mistake. This is the first event within the Math Beyond the Numbers series, so that means there will be more. And stay tuned to the end because there may or may not be a little hint at what the next event will be. Each event will be centered around interdisciplinary topics within the STEM, specifically mathematics disciplines. So first, I would like to say that there will be a panel discussion where we'll answer some questions about EDI within STEM and math and all of that good stuff. But why am I here? How is that all related? Well, fun fact, I am actually a bachelor's degree holder from Concordia University in biochemistry. I know. That is why I am here today dressed as a woman. In case you haven't noticed, I am a drag queen. If you don't, has anybody never seen a drag queen before? You're too scared to say it. Don't worry, I see you. I know which ones you are. I personally identify as a male, and so I'm currently dressed as a female clown, specifically. That is what I do. So yes, I have studied and got to my undergraduate degree at Concordia in specialization in biochemistry. That does mean that I spent 3 years with a rhinestoned lab coat, and it was really hard tying up my wig every time I had to step in the lab. I got a lot of citations because of it. No, of course, I did not look like this when I went to the lab. It is a fire hazard to have this much hairspray, okay? So, like I had mentioned, we do have a panel, but before that, we have a keynote speaker for you all. So, with this presentation, I would like to bring up to you from the Toronto Metropolitan Museum, oh my gosh. I watched Night at the Museum yesterday. That's why this is what happens. The Toronto Metropolitan University, Professor Anthony Bonato.
Thank you. Wow, I've never been introduced in a math talk by a drag queen. It's a huge honor. I have to say, Canada's Drag Race, watch out. So my slides, where have my slides gone to? Da-da-da. Get that set up for us. So while we're waiting, I am from Toronto Metropolitan University. I just flew in today and I am very happy to be here. Very excited to be part of this first event in Math Beyond the Numbers. No worries. There we go. What would a math talk be without a little technical hiccup at the beginning, right? So I am from Toronto. I'm going to talk about math and queer inclusivity. So I just want to mention, especially given this fantastic performance we had just now. Oh, there we go. I can still see the slides. I can see me and the slides is disorienting. That without trans people, without drag queens, we would have no queer rights. So especially these days, very polarized times that we live in, I think it's incredibly important to celebrate people like Misty and drag queens who are really, amazing people at the forefront of the human rights movement and the gay, lesbian, queer, trans movements. I also want to dedicate this talk to two people you may or may not have heard of before, Martha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. They were there at the beginning throwing the first bricks at the Stonewall riots in New York City. They're some of the forebears of the queer movement in the United States, which led to similar movements in Canada and Europe and across the world. They're queer and trans, and without, again, people like them, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be standing in front of you. So just a little bit about myself. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, and I'll talk about some of the issues and some of the concerns and things and ways that you can get involved. So I identify as a gay man. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am a mathematician. I've been a mathematician since 1998 when I got my PhD. I've been a professor for like almost 25 years now. And I'm currently a professor at Toronto Metropolitan. If you don't know what that is, it was formerly Ryerson University. So a couple things about my experience growing up as a young gay mathematician. I had a lot of mathematical heroes, people that I looked up to historically. So there were people like, Alan Turing or Katherine Johnson, Paul Erdős, Emmy Noether, Ramanujan, and others. And I really was reading a history of books and online about their lives. I was always amazed to see what they'd done. And then I thought for this talk about my list of role models. So I've compiled on this slide a list of my queer role models in mathematics. The empty set, right? There are none. That's not to say there have not been queer people in mathematics before me. There have been many. They've been there all along, but their stories have been hidden. We've not heard much from them. And that is changing. But from my own experience, there was no one that I could model myself after. Again, a little bit about my experience. So I'm old. I was born in 1971, and I remember the 70s. I remember the 80s. The 80s was a very different time than now, but in many ways, the 80s was a lot like now. And I'll talk about some of those themes as I go forward. Really interesting, my university, which at the time was Ryerson University, is on Church Street, which is the epicenter of the gay village, the gay community in Toronto. And there was this thing called the Battle on Church Street. I don't know if you heard of this. In 1981, there were raids by the police on bathhouses, on gay bathhouses, and that resulted in 3,000 people coming out in the streets and protesting, lots of police violence towards people, racialized people, queer people, and there was the first Pride Parade in Toronto as a result of that battle, the Battle on Church Street. Also, of course, and I'll talk more about this, and my shirt sort of betrays it, in the 80s, HIV and AIDS were very much a part of the fabric of being gay, being queer. So at the time, there wasn't really much known early on in the 80s about the virus. There was no PrEP, there were no drugs that could help people. And of course, the gay movement, the queer movement took it on themselves to sort of make progress on this. And the protests like ACT UP, the silence equals death, this very famous saying that came from that movement, they are really responsible for the movement on the drugs and on the treatments for HIV AIDS, not the government. It was the people, the queer people on the streets fighting for their rights. We also had in the 80s, Fenn Robinson, who became a member of parliament in 1979 and came out, first openly gay person as member of parliament. And like I mentioned already, there were pride parades. This is from Toronto in 1983, very small. I think the first Pride Parade in Toronto had maybe like 30 people walking down the street. Now there's 1 million people that converge in downtown Toronto. It's quite amazing if you've never been to it. And you have Pride Parades, of course, here in Montreal and almost in every other city in the world. These days, like I said, things have changed, but they haven't in some ways. We're still fighting for our rights. It's kind of exhausting to say that, but we are still fighting for our rights. Especially now, there's a deeper intersectional lens that's developed around queer rights. It's no longer just like white gay men like me who are talking about these issues. It's racialized people, it's indigenous people, two-spirited people, the gamut of it. And it's much more international. It's much broader than Montreal. It's much broader than Toronto or Canada or even North America. There's this thing happening in Russia you're probably aware of. Of course, there's the war with Ukraine, But there's been a sort of war on queer people going on now for over a decade, and it's getting worse and worse. To be queer in Russia is very, very difficult. And Uganda just recently passed some of the strictest anti-LGBTQ plus rights bills in the world. Okay, so even if you say that you're gay in Uganda, you can go to prison for life. It's not all bad. There's lots of things happening. We saw with that million-person march, whatever it was called, in Toronto, other cities, people counter-protested. There's lots of movement, you know, in favor of like queer rights, but there's a lot of work to do. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Niagara Falls. I always get that question when I present my passport to like the customs officer. Oh, you're born in Niagara Falls. Everybody knows Niagara Falls. We moved from Niagara Falls to an even smaller town nearby. You may have heard of it, called Niagara-on-the-Lake, which was very small, had a population around 10,000. So in high school, I knew one gay guy and one lesbian. Anyone else, I didn't, you know, they were not out. You know, we didn't talk about it. Even we were highly closeted at the time. I went to a Catholic school. We just didn't talk about these things. In university, things got somewhat better. I moved to the big city of Hamilton. Okay, that was the biggest city I lived in up to that point. I knew one gay professor. Some of you may know him, James Stewart, who wrote the calculus textbook. He was openly gay. You know, he was a professor in the department. I took one of his courses. And there was a general sense in the 80s and 90s, especially with everything going on with HIV/AIDS, is that people just didn't want to know about it. I mean, you can be gay, but they really didn't want for you to flaunt it or talk about it. Don't ask, don't tell, I call. And like I said, the HIV/AIDS pandemic was in full force in the 80s. A statistic that I read about during the COVID pandemic, we all remember the pandemic, right? Unfortunately, we lived through this horrible thing for the last 3 years. There was a time in the US where about 800,000 people had died of COVID-19 complications, right? And I remember that the total AIDS pandemic in the US, there were about 800,000 deaths during HIV/AIDS. And many of those were gay men. So this was not the first modern pandemic that we all lived through. Far from it. A lot of heterosexual, normative people were kind of ambivalent to it, where they're sort of scared of gay people. Some wished death on us, okay? But we lived through this. So we know what it was like to have gone through a pandemic. So I did my doctorate at the University of Waterloo, finished in 1998. I went out east to become a professor, limited term, and then I went to my tenure track position, my first one in 1998. And things were going well. I was in Waterloo, which is a small town, but you know, fairly open-minded. But I definitely got that sense that I didn't fit in. In fact, I heard third person from people in the department that I really didn't fit in. So it made me question. I was up for tenure. Like, you know, am I really belonging to this department? It was, again, all very sort of hush-hush. People wouldn't say it to my face, but I heard sort of from a friend of a friend. And that sense of not fitting in, many minoritized groups feel this, but queer people feel this constantly, pretty much every day, that we're just not a part of the fabric of society like everyone else. I got married in 2005. So my husband, Doug, you know, he's my rock. We got married actually before it was legal in Canada. We're one of the first people in Canada to be married. It was legal in Ontario at the time, but later it was a bill passed in the House of Commons and it was legal everywhere else. I moved to Toronto and commuted back and forth to Waterloo for a couple of years. That was not so much fun. It was about 120 kilometers each way. And I'll tell this story about my call to my Waterloo MP. While I was sort of living in Toronto before I moved, I was living in Waterloo before I moved to Toronto full time. I was a resident of Waterloo and I voted in Waterloo. And at the time there was the free vote in the House of Commons on marriage equality, on same-sex marriage. And I called the MP, no one was there. It was just a voicemail. So I left a message in favor of same-sex marriage. Came back, I was teaching at the university, came back later that day, there was a voicemail from someone from the office. And they said, thank you very much for your voicemail. I'll let you know 100 people called today about same-sex marriage. Out of 100 people, you were the only one in favor of it. So I thought, maybe I should leave Waterloo. This doesn't feel necessarily like a very nurturing space for me. And I did. There was a job at Ryerson University at the time, an associate professor job. I moved with tenure. And the rest is history. I've been very happy to be in Toronto. There's a very vibrant queer community. The university is very open and accepting. Things were better, right? Things were getting better. I even became chair of the department. I became associate dean. I have an active research program, many graduate students. I've been a success academically. And I thought, especially like, you know, during the teen years, that everything was good. Toronto was sort of settled off. We were done. We had sort of fought for our rights and we got them. Not so fast. So I think it was 2010 to 2014, we had Mayor Rob Ford, who was really an absolute disaster for queer people and queer rights in the city. This was a story, I think, from the Toronto Star. He objected to even flying the rainbow flag. There weren't the trans colors back then. So, you know, but he objected even to doing that. He wouldn't go to Pride. He would never, ever speak out in favor of queer rights at all. And of course, also, there was a serial killer on the loose and the Toronto police did not do enough. They did not listen to the community. Many people died. Many racialized gay men died. So there are lots of issues in Toronto, and there still are. They still are there in different forms. So I wrote a blog. I started blogging when I was associate dean, a little bit out of boredom. I just started putting out my thoughts. I love to write. So I wrote a blog called On Being a Gay Mathematician. And time flies, 2017 feels like yesterday, but this came out and had a big reaction. A lot of people were interested in this. I started getting invitations to panels, to EDI events. Students were coming out to me. I was making myself very out and visible. This was a bit like my coming out moment. At that point, I thought I was out, but in this very public way, talking about my experience as a gay mathematician. And now I sort of identify as a gay mathematician, where people say, like, what do you do as a professor? Well, I'm a gay mathematician. I'm not just a mathematician. Being gay is central to my identity. So some things that I've heard in my career, I'm not going to read these, but they're a melange of things that I've gotten in person to my face, sort of third party, and also stuff that I've gotten off of social media. And one of the things that people talk about a lot when you give talks like this, or you hear from queer academics is, well, you know, you have your academic work, in my case, mathematics, and then you have your queer identity. Those things are separate and they have nothing to do with each other. You know, I'm sort of expected to be like, I don't know, two people, right? Like I have to be one person at home, you know, with my husband and my friends and my family. And when I go to the university, I'm expected to be this kind of robotic automaton teaching mathematics without any emotions, right? Without a kind of learned experience and so on. And these comments are often sort of based in that. There's sort of a reaction of people say, well, why? Like, why? Who cares? Why should we be forced to hear about your identity? So I included this quote. This is from a Nature article in 2010. There's not a huge amount of literature on queer identities in STEM. There's more and more coming out as we speak. This was a great article. It's not just mathematics, it's STEM by Powell, Terry, and Chen in the very prestigious journal Nature. I'll read the caption there. Very powerful. It says, I get subtle microaggressions such as, but you're being too pretty. But you're too pretty to be gay, excuse me. And questions that are too personal, such as, when are you going to stop experimenting and start dating men again? Black queer women are sometimes forced to fit into boxes and hide aspects of our identity. There are so many issues facing Black people. We don't always have the time or the energy to get into being queer too. And I'm not Black, but I definitely feel that sense of frustration and exhaustion as well. I have all these different identities juggling, and there's a lot, often I feel like there's a lot of weight on that. And it can be difficult sometimes being a professor, being a research mathematician on top of all the things we face as queer people. So I just want to give you a bit of a snapshot of the kind of situation we're facing, because my experience is a lot of people don't know these things. So maybe they know bits of these things, but I think it's really important to understate it. I mentioned Uganda, right? So, like I had a conversation with my husband. We want to go somewhere on vacation for my birthday, right? It's like, I'm definitely not going to Uganda, right? And you can sort of list off all these other countries that I just probably would not go to. Very few countries really recognize queer rights. So things like marriage, homosexuality is illegal in more than a third of UN states, actually illegal. Death penalty in a dozen countries. Very few allow for provisions for anti-discrimination. So like explicit anti-discrimination in the law. There's very little bit of that out there. Very few countries you can adopt. And in Poland, where I have some colleagues, some mathematicians that I work with who are from Poland and they have conferences there, I'm a little concerned because they have these things called LGBT-free zones. I don't even really know what that means. If someone knows what that means, you can tell me after, but it just sounds a bit ominous. So, and of course, Russia passed this law in 2022, which mirrored a law in 2013 they passed. Florida. I love South Beach. I love going to Miami. My husband, he's very gay, it's very queer. I don't feel comfortable going there because if Doug had a heart attack on the beach and we go to a doctor who doesn't want to treat us for religious or other reasons because we're a gay couple, by law, they're not allowed to treat us. My husband could be dying in the hospital with no one treating him in Florida. This is mainly focused on trans people and sort of gender affirming care, but this applies across the board to all queer people. So again, do I really want to visit Florida? Do I feel safe there? And Tennessee, right? An anti-drag law. Major news, anti-trans bill, basically making performance like we just saw that Misty had, fabulous performance, illegal. Okay, I think it's been stalled. I don't know if it's actually been implemented, but it's there. And I think it's being battled out in Tennessee. Strangest times that we're living in. Invisibility is a big deal to people in minoritized groups. To us LGBT plus people, we feel invisible in lots of different ways. We don't often feel included. I mean, the phrase I love is diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a choice, right? We don't always feel included in events, in sort of like professional settings. We don't feel celebrated. There are very few, if any, prizes or even lectures or things at the big conferences focusing on queer mathematicians. And we often don't feel heard. We are a minority. Who knows how many there are, but there have been estimates of say 5% of the population are lesbian, gay, trans, etc. So we're a small minority of the population. Our voices don't always get heard in decision making. And I'll come back to this a little later. We talk about the joint mathematics meeting. So invisibility is a huge issue for a lot of minoritized groups. And I want to pose a question to you, rhetorical question for you to think about. Whose voices are heard? Whose voices are heard in any professional context in mathematics and STEM and beyond? Whose voices are heard? This is a really powerful question to ask yourself because the people whose voices are heard often make the decisions and often, like they're the loudest in the room, they sort of can steer the direction of things. And another part of that, a piece of that is, like, for example, today, I am teaching a graduate course today back in my university. I have my postdoc filling in for me, but I had to take time off of my work in the professoriate. I'd take time off my work as a professor to be here. I'm thrilled to be here, really happy to be talking to you, but I had to make the space in my life to do that. It's emotional, intellectual labor for me to do that. And I don't feel though often I can say no. Okay, so this is a thing that many queer people feel, that we really can't say no to things because if we say no, no one's going to hear our voice, right? So we have to sort of sacrifice with our personal life, our professional life to be part of EDI. And I want also people to reflect on EDI and its boundaries. EDI has become a real hot button issue. People equate it with wokeness. There's lots of pushback from various groups on it, but we have to start thinking of EDI beyond meetings like this, okay? We can't just, I feel like I'm speaking probably pretty much to the converted here, right? So everyone is probably open-minded, progressive on these issues. We're not reaching the people who really need to hear these issues, okay? And it goes beyond this meeting, this event. It goes beyond EDI committees. So I've served on the Fields Institute EDI committee. I've served on the Burrs EDI board. I've served on various EDI committees in the university. I'm now serving on this NSERC EDI committee. So I've done a ton of this stuff. But again, the EDI committees, it's like an echo chamber, right? They sort of talk amongst themselves and it doesn't really feel like they get much done. EDI committees are very frustrating to me sometimes. And also, we have a chair here, it's fantastic. We just can't look to the leadership of the university to do this, okay? They're busy, they have lots of things on their plate. You can't expect your president, your vice president, the deans, the chairs, whatever, to step up and do it. Often with progress on human rights, changes in the workplace, it has to come internally, it has to come grassroots. So that's a challenge to all of us as we walk out of this room. Think about ways you can make a difference, not just queer rights, but beyond. Also, professional societies, had lots of discussion there. I'm part of the board of the Canadian Math Society. They have an EDI committee. But again, the EDI committee is a bit siloed. It's just itself and it reports to the board. But I was on an award committee and the EDI committee doesn't necessarily interact much with that. So there's lots of issues that can arise there. The AMS, MEA, I'll talk about these organizations in a bit. I have a whole thing about sort of where you do your conferences and the implications of it. But some small steps. So I don't want to be, all negative. I want to talk about constructive things that we all can do, things that can help us. A lot of these have to do with meetings, but it goes well beyond that. So think about inviting queer researchers, okay? Inviting queer researchers to whatever it is, to the department, to conferences, to workshops, and not just outreach, okay? Outreach is great. It's fantastic, like events like this, but they're doing amazing research. Mathematical education, various areas of pure mathematical research and applied. Invite them for that, okay? Maybe start like, a queer math discussion group. I don't know, something like this. Recognize EDI as work. I put this now in my CV, right? So instead of just buried away in my services, right? Professors do this service commitment. It's like a third of what we do. I actually mention explicitly, here's the work I've done on EDI, because it is work. And one of my role models currently is Imogen Coe. She's a professor at Toronto Metropolitan. She was our first dean of science. She's an amazing leader, both nationally and internationally on EDI. She wrote a fantastic paper with Anna Sophia Barrows and Mahadio Tsukai. So you want to host an inclusive and accessible conference. It's a great paper, relatively short, as you can see. If you're thinking about running a meeting, okay, take a look at this paper, look it up. I think it's freely available online in its journal Facets. It has lots of great pointers to make your conference more accessible. And we've been organizing, I was part of the team that put together LGBTQ+ Math Days. We had this for 3 years in a row at the Fields Institute. We invited mathematicians to come and speak about their experiences, their research and their lives. And we wrote a paper sort of adjunct to that, which appeared in the American Mathematical Notices. This is with Juliet Bruce and Ron Buckmeyer. Juliet was the first president of Spectra, which I'll mention in a bit. And Ron Buckmeyer, he's a fantastic guy. He's been on the forefront of sort of queerifying math for many, many years. So check out that paper. You can find it again on the notices out there. So we have some ideas and thoughts you can think about and sort of the purpose of running these kind of themed conferences, what they do. And receipts. So receipts, things that, for the math community, I feel are a bit shameful. So I'm going to talk about these. So the first one was the IMU planned in St. Petersburg, Russia. In case you're not familiar, the International Mathematics Union is the largest math meeting in the world. Thousands and thousands of people go with all these satellite conferences. They give out the Fields Medal at this meeting. So it's a big deal. And they were planning to do it in Russia. It was between Russia and Paris, and Russia got voted for. Again, the queer people were not in the room. Our voices were not heard because there was opposition to it from the get-go. In fact, I and many others, I didn't start it, but I and many others put out a petition to move the conference out of Russia because many of us did not feel comfortable going to Russia with the laws on the books. And they kind of ignored us. They ignored us. It took the war in Ukraine for them to move the meeting. So again, queer people were like the canary in the coal mine. We told you that there was an issue there, and no one listened. In fact, here's a quote. So this text on the side here from a letter to the editors of the American Mathematical Notices, written by members of the board of the IMU. And I sort of gently highlighted there, sort of in blue, some activists, if you remember. So what they were calling people like me was an activist, because I guess I am an activist then. I was telling people it's not a good idea to do it. And they rejected the idea to link scientific activities to political and societal issues. How can we do that? How can we reject that? That is part of who we are. We don't feel safe in Russia. So this was, I feel, like a real black eye in the math community. I don't think that the math community stepped up at all generally, and our voices really were unheard. We were right in the end. Nobody is like going to hold the meeting in Russia for the foreseeable future, right? We were right in the end. And something more recent was, even more recent, was the MAA Math Fest. The MAA, it's another association kind of like the AMS, but primarily focused on undergraduate mathematics. And they held it this year in Florida after that law, that license to discriminate in healthcare law was passed. And especially like Math Fest is even more touchy-feely in some ways than AMS. You were sort of surprised to see this. And this slide that I have up here, this is taken from Ron Buckmeyer. He put up like sort of an acknowledgement, like we do land acknowledgements here in Canada. He put up an acknowledgement for Florida, listing all of the issues that arise when people coming to Florida. A lot of people didn't go because of this, but some people went. And this acknowledgement is a fantastic reminder that we don't always feel warm and accepted in these places we go. And we have more receipts. So if you're planning on holding meetings in a different part of Canada, you better check the news. Okay, like Saskatchewan is using the notwithstanding clause to sort of impose publicly outing queer kids. It's going to have huge ramifications for the queer community for generations to come. So, you know, if the CMS has a meeting in Saskatchewan, will I feel comfortable going, right? I have lots of colleagues there, I have friends there. I don't know, I probably wouldn't at this point. So we're back to this idea of inclusion. Diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice, right? The things that I tell queer people, things I tell people in minoritized groups is that you belong. You belong as much as anyone else. Your mathematics is as good, if not better than anyone else, okay? So you belong to the math community. Don't let anyone tell you you do not belong. And if it feels safe to you, it doesn't always feel safe. And I really am careful to tell people like that because some people, especially in the environment that we're living in now, do not feel safe being out. But if you are safe, if you feel privileged like me as a full professor to come out and say all these things, do it. Because we need to hear from you. There's so many gay, lesbian, trans people in the math community historically. I know of examples that everybody knew they were queer, but they never said it, they never talked about it. In some ways that does damage, right? I mean, I can't speak for those people because of their own experiences. Maybe it wasn't safe for them, but the more people that are out, the better. Make connections. I'll talk about Spectra in a bit. They run something called an out list and an ally list online. You can join it. If you're queer or not, you can put your name up. Okay, there's lots of ways through events like this. The CMS is running a luncheon and it's winter meeting here in Montreal. So queer luncheon, I was invited to speak again like this. I refused. I want to make space for other people to speak. It's not just my voice. And allies matter. Allies matter. So like I said, maybe up to 95% of everyone in the population is straight and cisgendered, right? Heterosexual and cisgendered. So we need you. We need you. We cannot do what we do without you, okay? It's vital that we have your support. And I'm really blessed to have some fantastic colleagues all over the country and the world who know about my identity, are very supportive and speak out and step up. But that's what ally is. You speak up and you step out for people who don't have the freedom and the safety to do it themselves. So how to get involved? Spectra, it's been getting more and more energy, lots of like attention lately. This organization for LGBTQ plus mathematicians, it's based in the US, but it has members from all over the world. Like I said, they have the ally list, the out list. They're running conferences now, which is fantastic, annual conferences. They're running the Lavender Lecture at the Joint Mathematics meeting. So if you're at the JMM, go to the Lavender Lecture. It's specifically a queer speaker from mathematical sciences, math education. EGAL is a fantastic organization. It's an advocacy and legal group. They're based here in Montreal. They were the ones who got part of that injunction passed in Saskatchewan to block the premier. Of course, he's using the notwithstanding clause when he recalls Parliament, but EGAL was on the front lines for that. So EGAL is your friend. Get involved with them. Give money to them. Rainbow Railroad also is amazing. They were on 60 Minutes recently. I think they had a big increase in their profile after that. They bring in queer people who are refugees from other countries. And there may be countries that you're surprised to learn. They're like refugees from places like the Bahamas. Okay, so we're not talking just about places like Iran, but sunny, beautiful Caribbean, right? Where everything's wonderful and you're in your all-inclusive resort, sipping your pina colada. There are people being murdered and killed because of their sexual identity, right? So Rainbow Railroad, fantastic organization based in Toronto, but now much broader than that. I want to end with a couple of quotes. If you don't know who Larry Kramer is, please go look him up after this. He's one of the most incredible people in the history of queer rights ever, really. I'd say the last century, but sort of ever. He was one of the people on the ground during the AIDS crisis in New York City. He told people to be celibate, which didn't go over very well. He was a playwright. He wrote this Normal Heart after the AIDS crisis has peaked, which is a very powerful play. It's also been done on HBO as a movie, television movie. He founded Gay Men's Health Crisis. He founded ACT UP. He did incredible work. He was angry a lot, okay? But anger was a powerful thing because people were dying. And I love this quote, I'll expand on it. It says, not enough of us are proud of being gay. Not enough of us identify first and foremost as gay. It's got to be the most important thing in our lives, and it isn't for most of us. So strike out gay and put queer, and you have an updated version of this. It has to be a major part of our identity. We cannot ignore this anymore. We can't afford to ignore it anymore. Also, a great inspiration, Martha P. Johnson, like I said, one of the original Stonewall writers, queer, trans, Black woman. No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. And I'm going to repeat that. No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. Existential universal quantifier there, right? Very powerful. That's why I'm not trans, I'm not non-binary, but I feel incredibly powerfully that I have to support these people. Okay? I have to do things for them the same way that allies have done things for me during my career. We are all in this together, in this queer boat together. We have to all sort of support each other. And I wrote an article in Nature. I was talking to the editors there about another article they were thinking about writing about indigeneity in mathematics. And they proposed this idea that I write an article about queerness in STEM. So I did. So let me just read the quote, sort of to finish things off here. For mathematics and STEM to flourish, they must be accessible to everyone, regardless of their identity. The next generation of LGBTQ+ mathematicians is poised to make significant scientific strides and move the needle towards greater acceptance and visibility. We must do everything we can to help them achieve their goals. Living as their authentic selves will enhance mathematicians' lives, and mathematics will be richer for it. It's paywalled, sorry, but I'm happy to send you an article. It's on Nature. You probably have it through Concordia subscriptions, but there it is. And I think that kind of summarizes everything I wanted to say nicely in a bow. You can reach me. I've got a website and my blog, and I'm also on X or Twitter. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Professor Bonato. Honestly, that was really insightful. And I hope you realize that it's kind of a full circle moment. At the beginning, you mentioned that starting off in this field, you didn't really have role models to look up to. And you being here, giving a speech like this, you're kind of now the role model for the newer generation. So we really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
We also have some time for questions. So if anybody has questions in the room or online, yes, we're looking at you. Feel free to ask them. Does anybody have any questions or comments? We will have a microphone flown to you. Don't be shy. Don't worry about it.
I'm open to suggestions. If people want to share their experiences and feel comfortable doing that. Any parts of the things I talked about, please.
We do have a question.
I'm Melina. I'm a professor in the Maths and Stats department. And I was wondering, you said you were in this EDI and CERC committee, and discussing with some colleagues, I'm under the impression that it's really when we talk with people who are EDI or inclusive, we know and we understand. And do you have any ideas on how to reach out to those who we feel are not necessarily, do not feel the need of inclusion?
It's a tough one, in part because we have tenure, right? So we have people embedded in the university who have, formulated their worldviews 30, 40, 50 years ago. And that's not ageist. I mean, it's just the truth that oftentimes it takes generational change to see these kind of changes in the university. We're seeing that. Every new hire is an opportunity, right? But it's a real tough one. I've not been able to figure that one out. Again, the question is how do you reach out? How do you reach out beyond this room? And, it's a really challenging thing. I think, you mentioned the EDI committee at NSERC, so I applied to be on that, right? But we've had one meeting so far, and really, like, I raised some issues, and I really feel like it's not doing much, right? Again, because EDI, I mean, NSERC needs to have an EDI committee. Universities feel the need to check the boxes of EDI. Provinces sometimes mandate this. And it just, EDI to me feels often very performative. It feels like we're not really doing the things that matter. So events like this are definitely a step forward. The people who maybe need to be here to hear the messages are not, but, you know, show them the video, show them YouTube afterwards. I don't know. So if you have ideas about, maybe we can talk about this in the panel. If you have ideas how to broaden the scope of inclusiveness beyond just EDI, I'd be really excited to hear from you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any that came in online by any chance? I see the searching. Okay, yes, we have a couple of questions here. Awesome. One at a time, don't worry.
Yeah. Thank you for the great presentation and the great intro. So I had it's more of a comment and something I find myself thinking about. So this interplay between, I mean, I see the value of all this action we're doing on EDI, but then the cost that is increasing. You were talking about work, like EDI is work. So the cost that increasing bureaucracy, work, paperwork, like, and at the end of the day, time for people. I'm curious to just hear your thoughts about that. You know,
yeah, the people who are in the groups that need the most support or protection are often asked to do the work. I mean, women know this for like many decades in the academy, right? Like, be on a women in math community, and it's all women, and it's only sort of audiences for women. It's really the men who should be hearing it, right? I mean, it's the same thing with with queer groups. I mean, and EDI in general, it's really a challenge. Again, I don't see like easy ways out of it. All we can do is maybe say that it's work. One thing I'll say too is I feel this, and Misty, you may feel this as well. I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit more. I feel there's a little more danger with EDI these days. It feels a little bit like some groups are very, very toxic towards the idea of EDI. And even when we were organizing this event, I reached out to Chris, and I asked about security, because, you know, there was an attack at the University of Waterloo. I think it was a women's studies course, gender studies course, right? And it was an individual who was sort of anti-woke, right? And we see it in the US, but we see it here in Canada, like that 1 million person march, whatever it was. I mean, there's this palpable sense, and at drag queen story time, it's become dangerous. I mean, this is something that I didn't really expect to see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we're already minority groups or vulnerable. And I feel like people tend to just pick on these kinds of groups because it's an easy target. And it's a whole other issue, and it's really large. And I think it, like you mentioned several times, it takes more than just us, the people that are part of these different groups, to speak out and understand. And we just need help from everybody, essentially, to kind of cast a wider net so they can hear our stories or understand our points of view and why inclusivity is very important. Yeah, and we had another question right over here.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm getting up because I'm short. I would like to know, as a professor, because we have a lot of professors, not only in mathematics, but all the other disciplines, what are the measures or tactics you use in class to make sure that students feel comfortable to be and to express what they are?
That's a good question. I think it falls on us. Obviously, in mathematics, I think maybe sometimes people forget about this, but these elements, like in humanities, perhaps there's more of a discussion about that. They'll talk in humanities courses about truth and reconciliation, for example. But you can put land acknowledgements on your course management form, your course outline. Land acknowledgements are a bit performative. Again, we know, I mean, they're not really saying much of value to Indigenous people, but at least it's a sentiment of that. You can use your pronouns. At the beginning of class, you can say, I am Professor X and my pronouns are this, this, and this, right? That just, even if you don't reference it again, it just sends a message to the class, right? And to your graduate students or whoever, this is a safe space for you. I put it also in my email signature, okay? And I'm sure there are lots of other ways that you can do this, but I think one of the key things too is sort of being open and having discussions with people, pointing out things, holding people to account. So if things happen in the department or in the faculty, whatever, that you feel are discriminatory or raise your voice and tell people, right? I think it takes everyone's voice. It can't be just, Anthony Bonato or Misty Waterfalls or anyone else. It has to be like every one of us speaking out. And professors, of course, I mean, even though, being a professor has challenges, we hold an enormous amount of privilege and power, right? And students look up to us. So I think there's a golden opportunity to be your own role model, right, to people, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's honestly a great point. It's oftentimes it's the subtle or very small things that people can notice that helps. Like you said, the pronouns in a signature, even just, the queer flag, or there's an ally flag that you can have somewhere, even a tiny pin. People will notice that, and immediately there's going to be a level of comfort there. That's always very helpful. Yeah. We have an online question.
Yes, there's an online question. Another community that is in somewhat minority in math is women, and it shares some similar initiatives for outreach as the 2SLGBTQ+ community. We meet and organize events for us, which can be helpful for junior mathematicians, but are not as helpful as they should be. Can we insist on policies at meetings, professional organizations to make these efforts more helpful? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. I mean, speak up. And, we've been seeing this more and more. So the number of plenary lecturers who are women, who identify as women, it's gone up. I saw an advertisement for a conference. They had 30 invited speakers and one was a woman. And I called out the organizer. Okay. So I asked Chris about this at the beginning, is this going to be a manel? Is this panel going to be all men? Because it's like, I don't want to be part of it. I was on an online panel and I didn't even know the other people, and it was all men, and people were calling us out afterwards. I felt so embarrassed afterwards. Sometimes you do it without even knowing, right? Because you're not organizing it, but you can speak up. Gender neutral washrooms. You can ask, the organizers, have they made facilities for that? Do they have a pride flag visible at registration? For women, are there spaces for daycare, things like this? I mean, you can ask these things. Maybe they're not going to do it, but at least asking it sort of sets the ball rolling, and people will respond. It takes time, though, as we all know, it takes time.
All right. I think that is all the time we have for questions for right now, but we will move into our panel in just a minute. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you,
Professor
Thank you
Bonato.
so much.
All right, so we will have a panel, not a manel, thankfully, with three new guests that we have yet to introduce. I did forget to mention at the beginning, there is a little sign-up box when you enter. We do have prizes to give away at the end. So if you want to, not while we're talking, don't be rude, but at some point when you have a free moment, just sign in, slip it in the box. That way you'll be entered to win. I won't tell you. That way you'll want to stay to find out. So we have for our panel, Professor Melina Mayo from Concordia University. Yes, please come and join me. We have a graduate student, Samane Kermani. Oh, back there. Awesome. And another graduate student as well, Nazrin Jamali, both from Concordia University. Feel free to take a seat wherever you'd like. And Professor Bonato, if you'd like to join us as well, feel free to. So this is going to be a very open discussion. We want it to be comfortable for everyone. You don't have to answer all the questions. You don't have to answer any of the questions if you don't want to. We just want to make sure everybody is comfortable and to be as informative as we possibly can be. So let us start this off with a very, very serious question. Could each of you just briefly introduce yourself and let us know who you are, your role in the department, and whatever else you like telling us?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the great lecture. Hi, everybody. I am Melina Mayotte, a professor in mathematics and statistics in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics here at Concordia. I'm mostly into actuarial mathematics, and I've been teaching here for, actuarial students since 2012. I'm doing research on a lot on natural catastrophes and statistics. That's mostly it. I have a research group of approximately now 8 grad students. And like, as you said, we do have lots of very nice, I love my job and I love everything we can do here. And it's a great opportunity for me to be here and just like share some thoughts with everyone here.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nasrin Jamali. I'm from Iran, graduate student of mathematics and statistics department here. I studied statistics for my bachelor program. Then I worked 5 years as a statistician. I got an MBA degree and work as a data business analyst. And then I noticed that I need to learn more about statistics. Right now, I'm a thesis-based graduate student. My thesis topic, I work on an AI model for protein family classification. I would like to, explain it more. Because something that is beyond our department, mathematics and statistics departments, that people think that we are working on integral, taking differential, something like that. They barely aware this fact that here we are working on great research topic that is really practical. For example, for my work, my model helped biologists to learn the family of a specific protein, because if we learn about, we can know which class, which known family is belong, and based on that, we can help to develop medicine or find a cancer protein as soon as possible with a higher level accuracy. Also, if you allow me, I would like to talk about some other research topic that we have. That my friends are working. I had 2 of them here. I will explain so short to show that yes, we are mathematics and statistics researcher. Yes, we have pure math. That one of application of pure math. The researchers are working on models or fundamental problems that helps quantum physics research area. But at the same time, in a statistics and mathematics department, we have practical problem. Like, for example, Sina, my friend, that is a PhD student, is working on a mathematical model to reduce image acquisition time. When you are in inside a CT scan device or machine or MRI machine, the time that you are there is annoying, especially if the patient is a kid. And this is application of mathematics model. And this is something that not computer science and not engineering a student, mathematics and statistics a student are working on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Samona Sami. My background of studies in pure mathematics. I completed my first PhD program in functional analysis, and I currently pursuing my PhD program here as a data scientist. And my field of research is econometrics of individual risks. It means that we are working on a sophisticated decision function of determining individuals' eligibility for receiving the loans, or finding the optimal credit granting for individuals. It's my research area right now. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great that we have such a diverse group of panelists, not only in gender origins, but also the types of the fields specifically and research that you're studying. So it's really interesting. So let's get on to another question. So in the context of either STEM fields or mathematics, what does EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion, mean to you specifically? I know it's a tough question. I'll give you a moment to think about it if you want. For me personally, it's just very simple. It means it should be accessible to all and everybody should be visible within these fields. Hopefully that was enough time to let you guys think and talk about it. Sorry, I have a tendency to speak fast. My bad. Go for it. Yeah.
I think I have more questions than answers, but that's something I'd like to know, how to make my research group, making it clear that it's available to everybody. And I try to, as soon as a student comes with a specific situation related to a minority, whatever it is, I'm trying to maybe like post information. I have a master's student, she's right here. She sent me at some point some information because she was in a personal situation where she wanted to discuss a specific problem in her origin country. And then, well, she shared with me some documentations and I've shared with the group, just knowing that everybody, if she wanted to talk to, after asking her if she would allow it. And then, so we could discuss about it. But I'm trying to see like what I can do at this point for students in grad studies, because it's easy for me when I teach to my kids, even kids sometimes are even better than adults, because my kids, they don't see any difference if I don't make it a difference to them. So, but for adults, then it's a bigger problem. And I don't know how to make it. I'm really open. I don't know, I have a few ideas, but I'm very curious to have more ideas on how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, in the society we live in, there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And that's why you were mentioning it is easier with children. They understand the concepts because they don't have to, think back of what they've already learned and try to change it or adapt it. But just asking questions is always really helpful. And like you were mentioning, sharing information, educating people, whether it's a small topic, is always extremely helpful. So I think that's already doing a great job. Thank you.
I mean, I'm also asking the other panelists, do you have any ideas of things that you would have liked to hear, or you think you're maybe, if you're not comfortable talking about it, if you have friends who discussed with you some things that they would have liked their supervisor to just put upfront before even enrolling, to make sure that they would be comfortable.
I can talk about the situation for one of my TA friends. Here, I can say most of graduate students are teacher assistant or course instructor. And I know one of, that a specific female TA started speaking this fact that because of her problem in speaking English, because of her accent, some student in the class laugh at her. And, the point is that she doesn't know that she should ask help. And I think the point is that maybe we should have kind of more information about this situation, because diversity means that, yes, recently I received a survey for EDI that if your language is, if French or English is your first language or not. If it is not, I'm in minority, yes. And this TA was a kind of upset, but she didn't know what she should do. I think lack of information for that is something that can be helpful. Yeah.
Maybe also finding a balance, because too much information, then we won't. I do agree that we need to put a lot of information out there. It's trying to find maybe the balance also, because if you're thrown out like too many emails related to what you see, yeah, but you feel that this person missed the information. Thank you. Interesting.
Anyone else? What EDI means to you?
Actually, in my field of research, EDI matters a lot. And there are so many researchers researching in the field of omitting the factors that are not fair to determining the risk of the loan, the risk of the, what do we say, loan, giving the loan from the, credit granting, or the risk for the lenders to give the loans to the receivers. So, for example, some factors are included now to determining the risk of these function, and like gender, like race, like age. So to be fair and just, we should omit these factors from our calculation. Yeah, it's I think about my field of study. Yeah, and yeah.
I've already spoken a fair bit about EDI, my perspectives on it, but I'll summarize it very briefly. EDI to means that we can always do better. And challenge yourself. I'm always learning myself. There are things that that I should have done or should not have done, and it's okay to make mistakes, but we can always do better.
Absolutely. And so we know a bit why EDI is important in not just STEM, but really life, to be honest. Can you think of any specific benefits EDI brings to your fields? You just mentioned that. Anybody else have anything to add? If you've noticed any benefits or can think of any.
I mean, of course, it benefits like to have like more, just like larger vision, and just to include every possibility is like a scientific, in démarche scientifique, like a proper scientific path. But I don't know, like it's very important in what I'm doing, working in the insurance with insurable risks. It's also, there's a great deal of fairness in all this too. So at least in my field, it's very relevant. But I feel that this is really focused, and I think it's like it's more a global. We need a global view and a global sense of EDI. And we try. Let's say Concordia University, I think, is a great university for that. And then in my department, I know we have lots of initiatives. And then, so maybe that's kind of the things that I don't know if it's a top-down approach or bottom-up, but it needs to go through the whole structure.
When it comes to problem solving, I think that people from the different perspectives and the different background of study can work together better to solve the questions and problems. Yeah, because every culture and every country has their own method of education. So I think that have all these together as a group and team working has a better results.
Yeah, different point of views can be extremely valuable always, of course. Awesome.
So I'll just say, I think about all the voices that will enrich mathematics that you will include. I mean, there was a time that women weren't mathematicians. There were very few of them. There were not hardly any Black mathematicians, hardly any trans mathematicians, all this. Now there's more and more of these minoritized groups. It's hard calling women a minoritized group, but it's true within the field of mathematics. I think it just means we're going to have better theorems. We're going to have better algorithms, better mathematics. The more people involved. I mean, it could be some trans teen woman who has the proof of the Riemann hypothesis sitting in her brain, right? And if she doesn't have like a safe space, ability to evolve and grow, then I mean, maybe we'll never find that for another 1,000 years. So, you know, we need everybody at the table.
Exactly. I think, you know, being inclusive brings these opportunities to those people, and it's great for any type of advancement. So this is a bit of a tough one. What are, or if you have a specific current challenge and barriers that you face or you know of people in underrepresented groups face? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Don't worry about that. It's really if you're comfortable with any of this. So don't worry about it.
I don't feel that much as a minority, but I've heard lots of things because I'm a woman, and I've heard comments about some results that I had and people telling me, oh, that's surprising coming from a young lady like you, things like that. And it's always difficult to hear because like, I'm just somebody. I don't want to be like this elite. I don't want to be, you know, labeled. I just want someone to say, hey, nice job. That's it. And this is one of the things, but something that came to my mind when we were talking about conferences and saying, well, if you're a woman, just ask for a daycare, if not just ask for a daycare, but things that could improve. I've had the challenge to bring one of my kids in one of the conference, and, you know, people notice that, that you have a kid there, and like colleagues are very helpful, but they still notice. And sometimes you do feel, you don't feel that much safe, if I should say, but it's more like professionally safe. I never felt like physically unsafe, but still I felt a little bit judged. So this is kind of a challenge, but yeah. So like being a parent, like trying to find the balance. But these are my challenges. It's very personal, you know, it's not.
Yeah, and I think personally and professionally, we should never have to feel uncomfortable, like you were mentioning. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's still the reality. Yeah. Anyone else?
Something this semester that is, I mean, this fall is a start year for my department. Every single year we have new grad student at fall. And for something that I notice is that as far as I know, many or all of graduate students that are accepted this year are not, I mean, the appearance is male, at least for me as a female. It was something that crossed my mind what it happened, because as far as I know, in US, there is kind of condition for accepting a percentage of ladies and male and female. And I asked about from one of our professors, and he told me that there is no condition that, for example, during these 2 years, if you hire 10 grad students, 2 of them should be female. And he explained that maybe this year we had, I mean, better applicant, better male applicants. And I was wondering if this is the case, because at least about my country, mathematics and statistics grad course classes are female dominated. At least about my country, I know that more females are great students. But I asked from two Black female, is it correct we can say that male are better at mathematics because it happens, because it seems that for my department, we had less applicants who are male. And, it's a problem that Black immigrants have here, that they come from a country that sometimes being a female in engineering or mathematics is not easy because it's male oriented. And sometimes it's so sad to mention that because it's male oriented and mostly your professors are male, they ask you something unfair and about sexual favor. And when these students refuse, they grades drop. And as a result, we do not have those students as an applicant here in Canada, multicultural country. And I think maybe it would be, I know that it's not easy, but maybe it's a good idea that we have kind of condition for applicants, not each year, each 5 years. For example, for a professor, that if you have 10 students, over these 2 years, 1%, 2% should be female. But because right now I do not have any course, but if I'm in a male dominated class, if I'm not a brave girl, how I can ask my question? They are male, it affects my performance also.
Yeah, I think because of the way society's been for such a long time, there isn't a welcoming environment for people of different cultures, women, or any type of diversity. And that's kind of what you were facing, which again, still happens to this day and is unfortunate. Yeah. Anyone else? No, that's fine. Good, awesome. So I think it was you, Professor, the mic is cutting out, I apologize, that mentioned a couple of initiatives in your department. So does anybody have any examples of successful EDI initiatives that you've been part of, you've seen, or that maybe you'd even like to propose? Yeah, pass the mic.
So with some allies, we started LGBTQ plus Math Day, which I mentioned in my talk. And this was to showcase the work and life of queer mathematicians. We had it started, I think it was supposed to be in 2020. And of course, something else kind of happened in 2020. So we did it online, but we had the maximum number of registrations that year that you can have on Zoom, which was 500. So it was a real resounding success, a lot of interest. It led to 2 successor events. And now there's the possibility of having another one after the JMM, which is in San Francisco, which, if you know anything about San Francisco, it's kind of a pretty queer city. And I don't claim to have any sort of, I don't claim to be the reason for it or the conference for the reason for it, but I've noticed now there are many more conferences that are aimed at LGBTQ plus mathematicians, and it seems to be gaining more traction. And it's not just generally broadly in mathematics. I've seen it in very specific fields like topology or number theory or other areas. So there are different communities, like there's a community in combinatorics, community in algebraic geometry, and they also all know each other. Algebraic geometry, by the way, is really queer. I don't know why. Maybe it's a very popular topic, but there are just so many queer people in algebraic geometry. Yeah.
Anybody else?
And I know that there is an institution, AWM, Association of Women in Mathematics. and they offers so many grants for traveling and mentorship, or they offer so many classes and workshops for women, especially in mathematics. I know that
That's
they are
great,
so
yeah.
active, yeah.
Well,
We're good. All right. You mentioned allies, and you also mentioned in your speech that, you know, if we're talking to a room full of people that probably already think the same as us, the message might not get that far. So do you have anything you would like to say towards allies and how they can help and how we can help get, you know, EDI a broader cast?
Start. So like I said in my talk, I'll just reiterate, allies are kind of the majority. So we need allies. You know, when there's a bill being passed in a parliament, it's largely people who, you know, a bill for queer rights, it's largely people who are not queer who are voting on the bill, right? So we've had to live our whole lives at sort of at the mercy, at the behest of people who are not like us, who don't share necessarily the same lived experience as us. So I do know there are lots of sympathetic allies out there, and I've spoken to many of them, and I really wish that people would just speak out. Math to me is hyper conservative. I think it's true for many areas of STEM, but for some reason, and conservative not just in the political sense, but mathematicians tend to be very quiet. They just prove their theorems, work on their differential equations, their algorithms. But you know, you can speak out if you see injustice, if you see things that you want to change. You can speak out, and it can be very powerful when you do. So use your voices.
Well, that was one of my questions. Because I do realize that, I mean, I travel in Barbados, where it's a country where it's illegal, I think, to be gay in Barbados. And well, I'm quite sure about it, actually. And I go there anyways, and I'm going to conferences in countries, or I maybe something that, and now it's very personal, I could do is be more and take more information about those things, and make decisions according to what I feel is the right thing. You know, like if I don't feel it's a nice place and it's not, and I think a word that for me is very important, it's to have a safe place. If I don't feel that it's safe for everybody, then I don't feel like that I should go, even if it's safe for my own little person. But that's.
I just follow up on that.
Yeah, safety should be universal. It is very important, and it's not always there.
Really briefly, and I don't want to monopolize time because I want everyone else's voice to be heard. But you know, if you had a conference in Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan, you probably wouldn't go, right? Because women are treated very poorly there. Queer people feel that way in many countries. So educate yourself.
Yeah, I think just need to sometimes look around. We all know people of that person of color that in a very white dominated field, or women in a male dominated field, or somebody that's queer in a predominantly straight field. And it's important sometimes to just check in with them. You know, as an ally, you can just say, hey, how's everything going? And if they pick up on a topic, maybe try to figure out ways you can help them with it. And that's kind of how we can get the ball rolling. Yeah. Anyone else? Any comments, allies? No, good. All right. So we have one other question before we head on to the audience and online questions. So start thinking of those, and you can start writing them in online if you haven't already. So what practical advice would you offer to aspiring STEM professionals, specifically those in underrepresented backgrounds who may encounter unique challenges like some of you have encountered? I know it's a loaded question. I apologize.
Well, as Anthony said, I think a lot of us are shy. Like I'm a shy person, and most of us are very inclusive. I would say in my department, I I don't have it. I don't want to say any names or do any statistics in my department, but I would say that the majority is very inclusive. So if anybody has any challenges, for sure, there's somebody to reach out to, and that, you know, like just to do what they want to do. If they want to do something and are scared or shy or don't feel safe, then act on it to do whatever you feel like doing. And I mean, it's not only in math, it's not specifics to maths, but I think like that we are more shy than people who are doing communications. So it's not always easy, but yeah, and yeah, I don't have anything specific to add.
Maybe we should say them, you know, or talk to ourselves and like that, don't underestimate yourself. You are special and like a fingerprint. This diversity is make the world colorful and beautiful, and what you do matters, and everything starts from you, and what you think about yourself, your ability, your power. You are powerful, so you can do whatever you want. So follow your dreams and don't underestimate yourself. Yeah, that's it.
That was a really lovely message.
And something that crossed my mind is that I again want to say that maybe, for example, when we started studies, sexual harassment department and university start sending many information about if something happened, what we can do. For example, I didn't know that verbal abusement is kind of sexual harassment. I didn't know, not at all. As an immigrant that are not familiar, do not know everything, I didn't know. I think maybe a kind of more shading information, a kind of department for that, because it really helped. At least I know that whenever something happened, as I had seen that many of the students know how support, who is responsible that we can reach and ask help. But for EDI, maybe something like this can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Advice to young people getting in the EDI space is brace yourself a bit for the workload. Especially if you're a member of a minoritized group, you'll be that token person sometimes. You know, just prioritize your own well-being and your own health, mental health, physical health. And you can say no as an academic. It is perfectly fine. There'll be other committees. There are lots of other people who will serve. So just be kind to yourself. I think kindness is something I don't hear a lot talked about with EDI, but I think kindness broadly to other people, but also kindness to yourself is critical.
Thank you. Do we have any audience questions? All right, let's start.
Hello, everyone. I just want to add something to what my supervisor said, Melina. I came from Iran. I consider it as a voiceless country. So I came here fall 2022. And exactly at that time, the protest happening in my country, something about women's rights and stuff like that. At that time, I didn't know that I can reach out to my supervisor and say my feeling, and maybe she could spread awareness to other people and then share the information, the protest that's happening in Montreal about what's going on in Iran, in my home country. So it was a bit of challenge for me to do this, to send a message, but I did this, and at that time, I get a really quick response from Melina, and then she started to spread all of the information about the protest in the group, and I was like, wow, I thought that it's maybe a bit political, something like that we cannot do it in academia area, but at that time it really, it means a lot to me. I felt really happy. Okay, I found some foreigner people that can hear us. So it was really happy for me. I just want to add the feeling that I had at that time. And after that, I started to speak with my parents, my friends in Iran, and tell them, well, my supervisor hear us. And it was a really happy moment for me. Well, thank you, everyone. I just want to appreciate Elena.
Thank you for that.
You don't have to. Hi, thank you so much for the panel, and not the manel, of course. It was really insightful. I'm going to launch into a bit of a story because I want to see a bit of perspective. I'm Miriam. I just graduated from Concordia. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a bisexual mathematician. Starts at the beginning of my math degree. I have a psychology background as well. So my entry to the math department was so-so. I like to think our department is really inclusive, but not always. I got rejected 2 times at the beginning. And then I did my prerequisite courses because I realized, oh, my advisor didn't tell me that. And then I got in. But it was it was unsure. I was kept being asked, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure this is the program for you? And I understand. The degree was pure math, pure and applied mathematics. And I understand it's a hard program, absolutely. Be constantly asked, are you sure? Oh, okay. Thanks. To be asked constantly, not great. It was an honors program, so I also did a research project. And then I started doing math and art research. That's the art that's here today. And my work was called Cute by colleagues and professors, which is very undermining. And do you want me to? Yeah. Thank you so much. Just swap that out. Thank you. Called Cute, and my supervisor's research, much in the same field, was called Kindergarten's work by also fellow professors in the department. So I just have to ask myself in those moments, there's a lot we can do, and also how to combat sort of imposter syndrome in those moments. And I think that's what we've been tiptoeing around a lot as well in this panel, where we join fields as minorities, and then we're asking ourselves, are we here because we're a minority, so a token minority, or are we here because we truly deserve our place here, and the work we've done in the past demonstrates that? And is being called also too cute to be a mathematician, and oh wow, I wouldn't have expected that you were a mathematician when you present yourself in a very serious setting. How do we combat imposter syndrome? How do we go past it? How do we help students as well see their place? Because I remember when I graduated, we were 4 women left in the program. I have to ask myself, what can we do better? How can we feel as students more involved, and also like we deserve our place there? Do we have any suggestions? I'm so sorry. I feel like you've been passed the mic a lot in this panel.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you brought out as you didn't feel well, and something I heard from Nahid, she was pointing out how well she felt. So those things are things that you can share with everybody, how bad you felt when you heard people telling what you're doing cute, and being constantly asked, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? And everybody, for everyone has personal experience being, being asked. And if you're not confident enough, and I'm not saying like there is no perfect level of confidence, but those are things that we need to hear. Those are stories we need to hear to know that this is the type of things I will, if I will for sure remember your experience if I one day end up asking someone, if I see the grades are not good, are you sure you want to come in this difficult field? Maybe I'll ask once, maybe I won't ask twice, or, because now I know. So sharing is very important. And yeah, so the emotions then that you felt are probably not nice, and the imposter syndrome, well, we all have it at some point. So hearing from them, we learn from our mistakes. I don't know, like, I don't feel that you talked to me and that I told you, but I just hear that you didn't feel good, and like, I'm learning from your experience, and we all learn from each other's experience. So that's something I think that's very nice that you accept to share your experience.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I think it wasn't a concern with the grades, not to brag. It was more, I felt it wasn't the grades. It was more like, it felt that as a woman of a particular background, it felt that was the issue to be accepted into the program. But of course, and I share my experience actually with a lot of people. And I think that's something in EDI, in terms of EDI, we have to share sort of our battles and our success stories and what we did to overcome that. And I really appreciate the fact that we have to be confident and sharing those stories, but sometimes it's not the confidence that lacks. It's also the ability to see that interdisciplinary research is still very valid research. And if we include art and mathematics, and we have education in mathematics, and actually now I'm at UQAM doing my research in math education, and that also sort of battles its way into the math department because it's not pure and applied mathematics. But we talked a bit about how our applied research is still research and still super important. And so I think having the confidence to share the stories are important, but I think it's also making sure that people are not alone and they don't feel alone. And all the 4 women in the program, we all talked and we're all like, yeah, we all feel like that. So I think it's something even beyond that needs to happen, potentially from the advisory level professors in the department, just saying. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I do want to also say, I know it's difficult and often very uncomfortable, but sometimes you need to talk back and respond. So if somebody says your work is cute, tell them, no, it's not. It's not always easy. It might not be the most professional, depending on the setting, but it's probably they've never heard somebody call them out like that. You need to have people take accountability for what they say and do. Yeah. All right, we had another question. Yes.
Hello. Okay. So coming from very much an ally perspective, trying to incorporate EDI into how I teach and how I include students as much as possible, I'm just thinking of what kind of tactics I could use. Like you were talking about conferences that didn't feel safe, right? And would it be a valid way of thinking of I'm going to encourage as much my students as my colleagues to boycott these conferences because they are not safe for people around me. And therefore, even though they are very safe for me, I should not be attending those in a perspective of respect to these colleagues that I want to include. So would that be a valid, this is open question.
I'm going to throw in a short answer there. Yes. Okay. Anybody else want to elaborate?
A short answer, no. Because the thing is, during the JMM saga, right?
Yeah.
I had a number of people who, some of them trans, right? Who were saying we shouldn't boycott St. Petersburg, Russia. We should go. So boycotts are very touchy. Some people are really, really like gung-ho, let's do this. Others are not, right? I'm very much of the camp that we shouldn't have. We should send a message and we should plan our meetings in the future to do that. But not everybody does that. So don't be pluralistic. Don't presume to know what the right path is for your students. I feel very comfortable directing students to do anything. I would maybe have, if you have the time or space in your classroom, I don't know, are you a professor or?
Not yet, but
Okay.
soon.
If you're teaching, say, even 10 minutes, have a discussion about it. Just bring it up as a discussion point. We don't do that a lot in math courses, right? We just like present formulas on boards, but have a discussion. Like, what do people feel about this? And there will be, there could be some fan of Jordan Peterson or something who will express some opinions, but there'll also be lots of other opinions. And I think all voices, we should try to hear all voices.
That's a good point.
No, I was just gonna go and ask if we had any other questions. I guess we do. Awesome.
So I heard one of your quotes, obviously, that there was someone who had mentioned not to why you're bringing sexuality into this, and your response is because that's my identity. It is me, and I don't have two separate identities. And then I also heard, and being a female in STEM, I understand I want to be recognized that my research is there on its merits and not because I'm a female scientist. So how do we balance or separate these two seemingly divergent views, which I don't think are, but I'd just like to hear your opinions on that.
For me, it means if I want to share my results and I never if what I'm doing is sharing my results, it's, hey, great result. If I'm presenting myself as Melina, mother of 3 kids, then people talk to Melina, for me, it's 2 different things. I am several things, and it depends on, if I play Monopoly with my kids, I'm in another role. So it's just different perspectives. And I totally agree with whoever, I agree with you that it's not necessarily 2 different ways of seeing things. It's all possible. Like all options are in there. I don't know if you want to maybe do the difference between.
Sure, yeah. And I think a lot of women feel that very much, that, I don't presume to know, but that the sense that they're being maybe invited for something because they're a woman or something like this, right? And I think that's a real hard line to follow. And I remember also on social media, people were putting doctor, a lot of women were putting doctor in their profiles because there's this sense that the women are not professors or not this sort of thing. So from my only way I can really talk meaningfully is my perspective, and I call myself the gay mathematician on my X handle. I just feel like I don't have a choice. I've written 5 books. I have 150 research papers. I have about 60 graduate students that I supervised, but I'm the gay mathematician. To me, that just is part of who I am, and I cannot ignore it. And I want people to know both.
I also think in today's day, we're still not at a point where people aren't going to focus on these things. So you kind of just need to take it in stride and say, yes, I am here because I'm a woman, but also because X, Y, and Z. And eventually someday in the future, it'll just be the X, Y, and Z. Hopefully, ideally, if we keep doing the work we're doing. Yeah. Did we have any other questions in the audience?
I think we had a few on Zoom. So
Awesome.
Those who are on Zoom, would you be able to unmute or raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and spotlight you. Or you can use the chat function. Okay, I guess maybe their questions are still percolating. So if there's anyone in the audience.
If there are no questions for right this moment, I will take a time to mention that there is a networking period after this panel. So feel free to stay, chat with us. There's also some food and drinks you might have already seen on the other side of this wonderful screen. Hi, myself. So yeah, feel free to stay and chat with us. There'll be some music. And also we do have some artwork on display. It is actually a little teaser of the next Math Beyond the Numbers discussion, which is on the interdisciplinary nature of math and art. So we do have some artwork on display from the Concordia Math and Stats undergrad, Miriam Boucher-Pinard, who is also here. We spoke with her earlier, and it's right there in the back. So did any of those online questions come in? No? Then I think we can throw it back. Does anybody have any last remarks they want to give before we end this part of the panel? I think it's all been said. Thank you all so much. Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists, Professor Anthony Bonato, Professor Melina Mayat, Samane Karmani, and Nasrin Jamali. Thank you all so much. You can all take your seat. I'm now going to announce the winners of the draw. Ooh, how fun. Oh, no one listens. It's fine. Yeah, I know you didn't want to miss any of the good talk. I know you didn't want to draw too much attention to yourself. We totally understand. Don't worry about it. What are you giving out? How does this work? What is going on? Oh, it's because they don't have a pen. Perfect. Okay, great. I'm just going to clear this up real quick. That was real quick. All right. Well, instead of just waiting around for you to fill out your little papers, we can do the little draw after. I actually had one last question for everybody and online. How do you feel about one last little performance? Yeah? All right, hit it.
I am what I am. I am my own special creation. So come take a look. Give me the hook for the ovation. It's my own that I would have a little fun. And it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey, what I am. I am. And live your truth. I am what I am. I don't want praise. I don't want pity. I bang my own drum. Some think it's noise. I think it's pretty. And so what? If I love each sparkle and each mango, why not try to see things from a different angle? Your life is a sham till you can shout out loud. I am what I sometimes the ace, sometimes the deuce. We face life, though it's sometimes sweet and sometimes bitter. Face life with a little guts and lots of glitter. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey, well, yeah, what I am. I am what I
I'm stuck in my flag. Oh my gosh. Thank you all so much. Okay. Now we can do the draw. I've stalled enough. That's perfect. These are them. You had to have written your name down. That's how that's how it works when we ask. Okay, so the prize, what is the prize? I completely forgot. It is at 50. There are three $50 gift certificates to the Concordia store, library store. No, Concordia bookstore. That's so sorry. I didn't write that one on my cards, that's why. The Concordia bookstore, don't worry, they have more than books. I have a sweatshirt that I got there, a cute 10 years ago, that I still wear to this day. So you can go see Chris after to get your gift card. Our winners are Patrick Gingell, Nazrin Jamali, awesome, and Miriam Boucher-Pinard. Congratulations. So that is the end of our event, but don't forget, we do have our little networking session afterwards. Just wanted to give a huge thanks to all those that participated and as well to the Math and Stats Department for putting on such an event. It is the first of hopefully many. Thank you so much to all of you for attending both online and in person. And also a big thanks to Chris Plenzik, who led creating this event. And on that note, let's chat.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming in. For those of you online and in Zoom, we'll be closing that up now, but just remember that you can watch us online on YouTube on our YouTube channel. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Misty. Have a good afternoon.